Hello, it's Mark Lanier with your video thought for the day. I'm back in Cleveland this week, and I thought it might be a great week to look at animals in the Bible. So today, I thought I'd talk about and think about myself cattle, cows, livestock. Now, cattle in the Bible, in the Old Testament at least, really symbolized possessions and wealth. Abraham is mentioned as having a lot of livestock. Mikneh, the Hebrew word that's used for livestock, comes from kana, which means to get or acquire. And so the idea was, if someone's got cows, they've got cattle, they're quite wealthy. In fact, the Old Testament prophet Amos mocks some of the society well-to-do women who had disregard for the everyday and the poor and the downtrodden. And he calls them fat cows of Bashan. Now, we can think calling someone a cow today has a negative connotation, and it does, and it did then too, but his idea was, look, you're filthy rich, and yet you're in the best position to treat people well, and yet you treat people even worse. It's an interesting idea. So one of my favorite Psalms in the Old Testament plays off of this idea of cattle, meaning wealthy or well-to-do. Excuse me. And it's a passage out of Psalm 50, and it's God talking. And God says, all of the animals in the forest, they're mine. The cattle of 1,000 hills, it's mine. 1,000 didn't mean there were one more than 999 that God had the cows on. 1,000 was an expression for just unlimited number. So he's saying, I got all the animals in the forest. I have all the wealth that earth has to offer. The cattle of 1,000 hills. God says, if I were hungry, in that same psalm, if I were hungry, I wouldn't even ask you. And the point that God was driving home is that God has all of the wealth there could ever be. He doesn't need you, and he doesn't need me to make him better off. But contrast the wealth of God, who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, with the fat cows of Bashan, the wealthy women that Amos takes to task. The difference is profound. The wealthy women use their wealth to build them up, to tread upon those less fortunate, to create a hedge around the society well-to-dos, while those that are hurting continue to hurt. Contrast that to God. God has all the wealth there is. And instead of using it to build himself up, he uses it to give to us. I mean, he had the cattle of 1,000 hills. He had all the wealth there is. He didn't need anything from us. And yet God so loved the world that he was willing to incarnate as a human and suffer at the hands of other humans to satisfy divine justice for you and me, to give to us out of his bounty. It's a profound thought, especially in America, where so many of us chase wealth. We want that extra dollar. We want to be able to retire early. We want to be able to fill in the blank. Yet the calling is not to amass the fortune. The calling is to take what you have and try to use it in ways that show the heart and the desire of God, recognizing that everything on this earth that is good and wholesome and right belongs to God anyway. I mean, if he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, all we are caretakers. And that's something to be thinking about in my video thought for the day. More animals tomorrow.